There's a term used in the spiritual community known as quantum leaping, or maybe you've heard it as timeline shifting, where you leap into another iteration or another version of yourself that was existing on a different timeline or in a different quantum realm. And what I'm saying sounds absolutely bonkers and wild and like spiritual woo-woo bullshit, but I think there are some areas worth speaking to in this department, because seemingly miraculously people every single day are having awakenings where they literally wake up a completely new person, or something happens and the trajectory of their life does a complete 180. You could think of like a drug addict becoming a successful millionaire, and completely sober too. Or you think of somebody who's atheist, and something happens, and suddenly they lead a life of divinity and communion with God. Or you consider yourself to be ugly, and you're overweight, and you're insecure, and you're the whole living in your mom's basement type stereotype, cliche, and suddenly something clicks. It's literally the reason we talk about it like being like shifting timelines or a quantum jump is because it's like something happens, something shifts, and suddenly you begin embarking on a completely different journey in your life. I'm sure you know somebody, or maybe you yourself have even experienced one of these transformations. I've experienced this in multiple different points in my life. I mean, to name a few, one of them being from the age of like 16 all the way up until 23 years old, I was addicted to nicotine. I was vaping and smoking tobacco and all this kind of stuff, and I had no intentions of stopping. And then my lung collapsed. Whether it was caused by the vaping, I don't know, the doctors didn't know, whatever. It was a spontaneous lung collapse, which means they don't know why it happened. But nevertheless, when that happened, in that moment I was like, I'm done vaping. I'm not somebody who vapes anymore. Literally, it just happened completely seamlessly. I was vaping. I felt a pain in my chest, went to the doctor. My lung is collapsed. I don't vape anymore. It was like a cause and effect type thing. And obviously you could say that the collapse in my lung was why I stopped vaping. Sure, that's the logical reason. But on an energetic level, I embodied in a completely new version of myself. The same thing happened with cannabis, where from literally like 13 years old, I smoked weed as much as I could, and then I was growing my own, and I was a stoner. And at the age of 21, I took a 3-day break, and I'd never taken a break. And then when I went back to it, I took a bong rip. I got so high, I was like, I'm not gonna smoke weed anymore. It was like this sudden shift, you know? And these are some subtle examples. But another example, a little bit less subtle, a little more intense, is 8 months ago. I talk about this a lot on the channel now because it's something that's really beginning to become apparent and impactful for me. But 8 months ago, I said no to a toxic relationship. And for some reason, what resulted from that is becoming like a full-time YouTuber. How the hell that lines up and how you tie off those ends together, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. But the sentiment is that we go through certain experiences in our life which result in sudden and powerful transformations of our life and of our personality. You think of somebody who's like I was saying a moment ago, addicted to drugs, and then all of a sudden they have like some sort of experience where they come close to overdosing, or they witness their friend overdosing or something like that, or they get put in jail or something, and all of a sudden this thing clicks and they're like, I'm not addicted to this drug anymore. And sure, the body physiologically goes through this experience of like withdrawal and stuff, but it's almost like a delayed effect of the body coming back into union and harmony, or resonance rather, with the version of yourself that you now are. Now, I want to share with you a really far out story of just what I mean when I talk about quantum leaping or timeline shifts. Now, it sounds weird to say this stuff, but hear me out. So, I've been in a relationship with a beautiful girl for close to 8 months now. Now, this is a long distance relationship. She lives all the way in Morocco, Northeast Africa. I'm over here in Maine in the United States. We're pretty far apart. Now, not only is she from Morocco, but she's also part of the religion of Islam. She's a Muslim. Now, traditionally, Muslim women aren't allowed to be with non-Muslim men, because I'm not a Muslim. I'm definitely not going to pretend I am, you know what I'm saying? And when we were first initially talking, we were flirting and vibing and getting closer and closer and closer, and there was this, it had been mentioned in passing that we can't be in a relationship because she's a Muslim and I'm not. And we were both just kind of like, haha, let's just kind of ignore that, whatever, that's, who wants to focus on that? Let's keep flirting with each other and like catching feelings for each other. And then the time came, fortunately, very soon in our connection, where I realized, okay, I have feelings for this girl, and I take it that she has feelings for me too. And if we don't have this conversation now, things are just gonna get really bad, and it's gonna hurt both of us if we don't talk about this now. And so I brought it up. I brought it to her attention. I said, listen, we're obviously like really vibing with each other, but we're both aware that we can't be together. So if we can't be together, we need to stop this. We need to stop what we're doing. And I tried sort of talking like, can we, like, are you sure that God said we can't be together? You know what I'm saying? And she was being honorable to her faith, which I completely respect and honor. That's why I brought it up and was willing to disengage, you know? And here's the interesting thing, though, is that night, we kind of came to the conclusion that we can't be together, okay? We're not allowed to be together, and it's not going to work out. It never will, it never could, and we're not allowed to be together, so we're just going to stop growing together, catching feelings for each other, falling for each other. But the really far out part to me in that was that as we were talking about how we can't be together and we're not able to be together and we're not together and we have to stop and all this stuff, there was this very weird feeling. It was almost like it was discontinuous with this reality I was in. And the only way that I can describe it was I was thinking to myself, I was like, no, we are together. We are in a relationship. We just haven't like matched it yet. We haven't realized it quite yet. It hasn't become realized, like manifest in the world quite yet. And it was like we were teetering on this little point of we're not together, but literally we are together. Okay? It was this feeling like we were the width of a hair away from the reality of us being in a relationship. And I remember voicing this to her. I was like, it's so weird, like, we're not together right now, but I feel like in like some sort of alternate reality right now, like we're literally together. We're just like, there's this tiny little veil keeping us apart. Now, lo and behold, less than 16 hours later, we were in a relationship. We both, fortunately because of her grounded faith and faith not in tradition but in truth of her religion, she did her own research and realized nowhere does it say she can't be with me. She had just listened to the cultural traditions of those around her, you know? And so I went to bed that night. Like, I felt like, well, damn, man, like, we're not together, but, like, I also kind of feel like, no, that's not true. Like, we're together. It's just, like, you see what I'm saying? It was this, I had this conviction that we were together, and I don't know why. And that's the mysterious thing I'm talking about. And then I wake up in the morning, and instead of not talking to her, which is what I would have done if we were going to disengage, I decided to say good morning, right? To continue, because I was like, no, like, we're not done here. That's a joke. That's nonsense. And within a few hours of the morning, she told me that she had found out that we can be together. And there was no sort of discrepancy between her faith and us being together. And boom, we just picked right up where we left off and kept going. We were together. And that is a direct example to me of somehow not only this idea of coming into a different version of myself or a different version of reality, but also that I was like aware of it. And what it speaks to is embodying the self that you want to be. Rather than looking up and out at who you want to be, sort of stubbornly insisting upon it. Like, no, like, this is who I am. This is what we are. Now, obviously not delusionally. You don't ignore the signs of reality, but it's like a quiet conviction. I'm sure you know what I mean. Like, you go after something. You go for a job interview, and everybody's telling you you're not going to get the job, bro. They're telling you you're not fit for the job, or it's unrealistic, or it's a dumb job, or it's too risky, or whatever it is. Whatever reason it is, everybody on the outside is telling you it's not going to work out. And even you kind of feel like it's not going to work out too, because you're in a feedback loop with your environment. But there's this deeper, subtle conviction. Like, no, it's going to work out. I know it's going to work out. You see what I'm saying? And then you go and do the job interview and it works out. Now, I had this really far-out experience one time where I have a whiteboard right behind the camera right now. And it's got my workflow on it. It's all the stuff I do, my routine of work that I do with YouTube and newsletters and all this sort of stuff. It's got a to-do list of plans of what I have to do. And it's got goals on there. Goals that I have set for myself. And there was one time I was laying in my bed, which is right over here, and I was in a interesting state of mind, and I looked at this whiteboard, and I started judging it. I was like, that's so, like, cringy. Like, I have a whiteboard with goals and to-do lists. I was like, what is this? This is some, like, amateur shit. Like, what is this about? That's cringy. I thought it was cringy. I was judging myself. But then, all of a sudden, I had this really weird flip in consciousness where I was looking at that whiteboard from the vantage point of the one who had become, how do I say this? Where that whiteboard had propelled me to. I was looking at it from the end. The reason it felt like an amateur thing was because I was looking at it from the place of having fulfilled the reason that whiteboard was up there. I was living from the end, which is how Neville Goddard would say it, who is a huge proponent of manifestation. I was looking at that whiteboard. It was like I was looking at myself as a 16-year-old, kind of judging myself, but not realizing that the reason I'm judging myself is because I am that person that 16-year-old was soon to become. And it was literally like this really far out feeling of witnessing the completion of my future in a way. It was really far out. And if you're not tracking this, I don't blame you. It's really far out stuff. I don't often use the words timeline shift and quantum leap and all this kind of stuff because I don't know what the hell that even means. But what I am well aware of is that we can suddenly, seemingly instantly, become a new person. Something happens. A catalyst for these kinds of transformations is often hardship and pain, where there's a death in the family, or somebody breaks up with you and leaves you, or maybe you yourself almost die, or you get fired from a job, or your house burns down. Like, pain and hardship can often trigger these quantum leaps or whatever. But, you know, when you think about it, it's almost like what it triggers is you taking inventory of yourself and it's like you suddenly become aware of what you really want. Watching YouTube videos on self-help is one thing, but working with someone who can offer you practical and advanced feedback tailored to you personally is a whole other thing. The most progress I've ever made in a particular area in my life was when I had someone working with me personally on that particular thing. So if you resonate with these videos and you have something going on that you think I could help you with, click the link in the pinned comment below to book a completely free discovery call on a date and time of your choice. We'll talk, get to know each other, and we'll see if it would be in both our best interest to work together in my coaching program in the future. I promise you it'll be worth your time. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you there. Something deep down that you really want. Now, there's a musician that I love so much. His name is Mike Posner. He's the one that made that song, I Took a Pill in Ibiza, and the remixed it and all sorts of stuff. Well, if you listen to that song, he's talking about how he went through all these steps of blowing up and getting famous and becoming that guy, all to realize that he was empty and it wasn't enough. It wasn't what he was really looking for. And he became depressed and alone and disillusioned, and he realized that the money ain't it, the girls ain't it, the fame ain't it. He felt more lonely up at that top than he did being one with the crowd. And it set him out on this beautiful spiritual journey. You should go check him out right now. Like on his Insta, he's like walking across America. He did it years ago and he's doing it again, and he hiked Mount Everest and he did all sorts of profound stuff because he realized that the fame, which is what he set out to do, wasn't what he was actually looking for, and it created that shift. Now, I don't think my mom would mind me sharing this story, but my mom experienced if anyone experienced a timeline shift, it was my mom. If anybody I know, it was my mom. Now, my mom struggled immensely with alcoholism, like very, very bad alcoholism, where multiple doctors say she should be dead. She should not be here. And in a climactic moment, you know, I witnessed horrible things as a child of my mom and her alcoholism and her almost dying multiple times and all sorts of stuff, okay? And in a climactic moment, she wanted it to end and she didn't know how to get out of it. So she essentially tried to drink herself into oblivion, into death. And she somehow woke up in a hospital and had no contact with her family, us and her husband and all this stuff. And nowhere to go, no money, no phone. And once she was admitted out of the hospital, I think that's what it's called, when she left the hospital, she said when she walked out the doors of the hospital, you know, she'd been there for weeks, the sun hit her, and she, in a single moment, realized that her alcoholism was over. It wasn't there anymore. Something was different. What is that? Because if we talk about addiction on a physiological level, it doesn't just go away. You're physically addicted to it. When you don't have it, you crave it, and then you do it again, and you feel good, and then when it starts to wear off, you need it again. That's addiction. So what the hell is the deal with her walking out of the hospital? And she'd tried to stop many times. She'd convinced herself she was done many times. But for some reason, when she walked out of the hospital this time, she knew. She was convicted. She knew she would never drink again. She says that God took it away from her. And I don't doubt that. But what's also far out to imagine is that she shifted into a different identity. She became a new person. The mom that I knew that got into that hospital, that mom died. The mom that walked out was a different mom. That was a different mother of mine that walked out of that hospital. And interestingly enough, this was close to 10 years ago, almost a decade ago, and that's when I got involved in my spiritual journey too. And ever since then, we've been walking side by side together. And it's so beautiful. Now, how many of you have experienced these moments where suddenly everything is different? Something happens and you realize that your life will never be the same. Now, it's often in retrospect that you recognize that. Where you look back and you realize that right there was the moment that the change started. Maybe certain people remember it in the moment of it, whereas other people, it's in retrospect, where you look back and you realize that whatever happened sparked a new you. Now, a lot of people practice and try to quantum leap and shift timelines and all this kind of stuff, but I think it's a little bit deeper than that. I think it's more so destined when you come into a different version of yourself, a higher version of yourself, one that serves, one that is embodied in their purpose, one that's here to live their dharma, to do what they're meant to do. But if I were to offer any sort of advice, any sort of tips or tricks or strategies as to how to quantum leap or timeline shift, you want to know what I would have to say? Become that person right now. I'm gonna run you through a really quick exercise, okay? Let's say you want to be in a relationship. You're single right now and you want to be in a relationship. What would it feel like to be in a relationship? A loving, healthy, the relationship that you dream about. What would you feel like in that relationship? How would you carry yourself? How would you feel about yourself? What would your daily routine look like? What kind of thoughts would fill your mind? How often would you be excited and feel warm and joyful? What would it feel like? That right there. What you want. Think to yourself, what would it feel like? And how would I act if I were that person right now? If you want to be a millionaire, if you want to be financially free, let's just say that, financially free, what would that feel like? Fill every cell in your body with that energy. What would it feel like to be financially free? How would you carry yourself? What would you do? How would you spend your time? What thoughts would fill your mind? How would you go about your day? Because that's the secret. That's the thing that shifts. You become the version of yourself that you wish to be. And if there's any road to quantum leaping or timeline shifting, that's it. Is feeling your way into the version of yourself who already did it. Like me looking at my whiteboard being like, that's silly, because unknowingly I was looking at it from the place of where that whiteboard had gotten me to. You see? You look at it from the end. You live from the end. There's a beautiful meditation technique called the revision technique, where at the end of the day you sit down and you go back to when you woke up this morning and you think about every moment you can remember and the thoughts you had in regard to those moments, and the good moods and the bad moods and all this stuff and all the interactions and all the circumstances and all of it. And what you do is you reverse engineer the day into a process that got you to the point where you're sitting down right now as the person you want to be. Who cares if you think it's delusional? Who cares? You're spending your time sitting in that moment generating the energy of fulfillment, the energy of joy, the energy of satisfaction and contentment all by rearranging your relationship to the day you had. Because, let's get real, that's all it is. That's all. Your good days and bad days are relative. They're real in relation to how you look at what happened. I realized the other day, I was driving down the road and I had GPS on. I was trying to get somewhere, trying to get somewhere. I'm not there now. And it was 10 minutes away and I thought, gee, 10 minutes, ugh. It was like long all of a sudden. But see, 10 minutes is nothing when you're hanging out with a loved one. 10 minutes is a really long time if you're like in a house that's burning down. The time is subjective. It's not the time that you dread. It's your perspective and relationship to it that you dread. Where you are right now and where you want to be, the only difference between the two, the only difference, if anything, between the two is how you're relating to that vision you have of where you want to be. Is it a dream? Is it something that would, is it an as if? Or a what if? Imagine that. That'd be cool. What if you brought it a little bit closer and started to embody it right now? What if you started to act like it was already here right now? Now, before I end this video, I want to tell you, I want to give you a little challenge. For the next week, for the next 7 days, I want you to, as best as you can, act like you are already the person you wish you were. I don't care how hard it is. I don't care how much you feel it's delusional or not true or whatever. Act like you have it. Act like you are it. Act like you've already accomplished that thing. Do it for a week and tell me what happens. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed. And if you did enjoy it, before you head off, consider liking this video because it helps me out a lot. And the main thing is that it helps this video get a greater reach and get recommended to people like you who may really need to hear this kind of stuff. And if this is your first time on the channel and this video resonates with you, I recommend subscribing because I post stuff like this every single week. It's what I love and it's what I do, so I really look forward to seeing you there. So with that said, thank you guys, and I will see you all in the next video.